Hi, and welcome everyone to Ethereal Encounters Unveiled. Today we are broadcasting live on the United Public Radio Network and the UFO Paranormal Radio Network, 105.3 on the Gulf Coast and 107.7 FM in beautiful New Orleans. Hello, everyone on this cold day, at least over here. We've got some nasty weather coming in, so stay warm if you're in this side of the woods. But anyway, thank you all so much for joining us today. I'm so excited for this topic. I know it's going to be a banger. And again, welcome to Ethereal Encounters Unveiled. And of course, much thanks to United Public Radio Network and the UFO Paranormal Radio Network. We adore them. So since the dawn of civilization, humanity has grappled with the forces beyond what the eye can see. It's always been a battle between lightness and darkness, good and evil, that has shaped our stories, our society, and even our souls, really. Angels and demons, whether literal, symbolic, or somewhere in between, have been our guides, our challenges, and our mirrors. Today, we're honored to be joined by Michelle Desrochers, who will guide us through the ancient struggle, revealing how these timeless forces have influenced and still do civilizations, morality, and continue to shape our lives today. So welcome to the journey of angels, demons, and the eternal struggle between light and darkness. Michelle.
Hello.
Hello. Always such a blessing to be here with you.
Aw, thank you. I love being here. It's always a lot of fun. Our topics are just always so blended, but it's just so interesting. So
yeah, this one's going to be off the hook.
oh,
it's a good one.
It is, and it's a really deep dive. It goes so far beyond just the typical, angels and demons, because there's just so much that goes back to ancient times, that maybe things are not all as they seem, right?
I think so.
Yeah.
Well, let's say hello to some folks.
Yeah.
We have Heidi. Much love to you. Sherry, such a pleasure to see you. And as you guys pop in, Michelle, hello. Oh, she was saying hello to Heidi. Hello.
Hello anyway.
Hello anyway.
Yeah.
There. She said hello. So there you
There
go.
we are. Yeah.
So, this topic, it's really at the core, I think, of human nature and our spirituality. And for a person like yourself who adores history and does a lot of historical research, I thought this would be right up your alley as well. So do you want to get started with the Gnostics maybe, or you pick and choose, but
it goes way before that.
I know it does. But I'm so partial to that lately. I really believe that I'm digging that, and I'm it's in my heart.
Resonates, doesn't it?
It does resonate. Yeah. But you start where you want to start, and we'll dig in.
Okay. Well, first, I think we need to realize, we've been plagued with the belief that our souls have been in a tug of war, right, through good and evil through the ages. But we can't forget as well that we are a very important commodity, and that is energy. We are like receivers. Everything about us is special. I think we can go back to, how we were created, how we were altered. There's a whole list of things there. I think somewhere along the line, we did at one time live in a pretty good space as far as not being so conditioned until maybe, the alteration occurred for some. But we have been conditioned into belief systems that pretty much have kept us in fear, and, conditioned into submission, obedience. And it doesn't mean that there aren't things out there, of course, that we shouldn't be concerned about or that we shouldn't fear, because they are. But there are a lot of things that have been misinterpreted, misunderstood. And we get into ancient cultures, for example, multiple gods. And some of the names, that are very familiar as per cultures ended up on the demon list.
Yeah.
So you're not necessarily, when you're looking at some of these beings, and you can get into a lot of deep dives about, let's say, Baal or Baphomet, and people think those are demons. Ah, yeah, well, they certainly are. And a lot, as far as Christianity came in, and of course, as they, like anything, they take over an area, they blend their cultures and celebrations together, and it makes for an easy transition. And then over time, things change, and then that's a whole other modern thing going on, and best
Yeah.
suited for a whole other show because I don't think we're gonna make it that far.
Yeah.
But the threat has been there, and it shouldn't even just be limited to otherworldly entities or, such as demons or angels and watchers, and we'll get into all of that. But I mean, spirits can become very possessive of the living as well, because we are good energy. And sometimes they attach because they like that energy. Bad person in life, you're going to be a bad person in your afterlife. It really is that easy. It's the way it goes. But if a spirit wants you all to themselves because they find you easy to manipulate, because of your energy, whatever the case may be, they feel attracted to you. They will. It makes you, easier to frighten, whatever the case may be. We have to remember that this can also create mental and spiritual trauma, right? So, as we get in a little bit, we have to also keep in mind that we are dealing with ancient mythical beings,
Hmm.
hybrids of sorts. Look at Anubis, half man,
Yeah.
half jackal. Then we got the centaur,
Yeah.
half horse, and half human. That comes in different variations. I mean, those are just two examples, but there were many ETs that were maybe mistaken. For example, angels would be looked at maybe as light beings. Some people say no, they're Palladians, and but light beings for sure. Whereas demons, reptilians, Dracos, are all kinds of different type of species like that, or races, you know, light beings being very benevolent. And we know that benevolent ETs are very interested in our spiritual growth. They assist in many cases to help our personal evolution, teaching or reminding us of our abilities, psychicness, and telepathy, things like that. They preach the importance and teach the importance of love and compassion and being one with everything, right? Then your more malevolent counterparts are known for the control. That's the whole loosh thing, the energy. They have many characteristics that are much like, let's say the demonic realm, since that's what we're including in our conversation. While others are believed to be step-ins or influence the world's elite and those in power, sort of thing. So you can start, going back in time, and that things existed because we could talk about the bells in all of these churches, which were at one time, getting back into ancient times, this was there for soothing, to give us frequency. But it also kept really malevolent beings like demons away. And it's alleged that it would keep these entities, including maybe shape-shifting ETs, from shape-shifting. And then hence the war came, the war efforts. These bells are buried, and we need to ask ourselves why, because they're being dug up. Some of these bells weren't not just in churches. They were in entrances to large cities of the time, huge things. You wouldn't be able to just lift that. Just wouldn't. So you can find all of this stuff. Anything I'm talking about, you can go out and find.
Oh,
You
yeah.
know, I try to make research really easy. So if anybody wants to cross-reference anything I say, because I've cross-referenced it, you want to do that, you know,
Yeah.
it's all out there.
And ever since Nathaniel, um, who you've had on your show many times, I've had him on my show too.
Yeah, he's a
Ever
good
since
friend.
yeah, he's great. Ever since he kind of brought to light, no pun intended, the fact that these orbs, these beings that we're seeing, and they're being recorded, thousands of them every day, that
Mhm.
these could be demonic and they're not necessarily angelic. that they're tricksters and that, so, you don't even know.
Mm.
It's like once you learn that, you question all of it because you can't even trust what you think you see anymore or what you hope to believe that they're angelic. Maybe they're not. I mean,
Well, he calls it the phenomenon, and he's done some really extensive research with other very reputable people,
yeah,
like Barry Fitzgerald, like Steve Miro. I mean, these are reputable researchers, and they have seen, you know, evidence of certain things. And
yeah,
when you start getting into that, you'd really have to get on my YouTube. You could find all of it there. I mean, he's researched a lot of different, variables, getting into tulpas and egregores and golems and things like that. And I know Barry's been on my show years ago as well, talking about just this, and things are not all as they seem.
exactly.
Absolutely, because, I mean, you have ET that can mimic, with
Yes,
shape-shifting or giving you the illusion of how they want you to see them. We know that the demonic realm does this as well. So you think, for example, mimicking not just appearance, but mimicking voices and sounds. So you think you're hearing maybe a loved one and you're not. You're hearing something
absolutely.
else that's waiting for you to make that invitation to
Yeah.
bring them in, right? So
Oh, it's so interesting, and it's funny because, and we're a culture where we have welcome mats and we have welcome signs, and I was also told never welcome anybody into you. Never say the word welcome because once you do,
it's an
you're
invite.
opening yourself up to like God knows whatever,
It's an
whatever.
invitation, and it makes it a
It
little bit
really is.
harder to deal with. Like, as we move along, I mean, we can definitely talk about the different types of demons, how cultures, how they revered them, or how they worked, trying to eliminate them. We could look at different rites of,
Yeah.
different parts of exorcism throughout different parts of the world and deliverances, and we can get into to all of that,
Oh,
you
yeah.
know. But I think we have to remember too, again, what we see today is very different than what we saw back then or what we were shown back then. Say, like, we'll talk about, let's talk for a moment about angels, watchers, and demons. Okay, so there's this belief at one time everything had their place and never should have been separated or divided, and Christianity came in and you know, move things around, put things in their place as they believed they should be, right? So this, again, this just goes back to the ancients, and even long before Christianity, we know that all of these beings existed. I think it's a matter of who we how we perceive them now, how we perceive them then, right? But I say, for example, before Christianity, angels were nothing like these soft, peaceful figures that we imagine today. They're very powerful, very frightening forces that acted as messengers or agents of the divine, right?
Mm,
But when they come to you, and the first words that they say is, "Be not afraid," it was not as comfort, but maybe perhaps more as a warning, because they were not gentle, but getting into, like, the early Jewish traditions and Middle Eastern traditions, they appeared as blazing beings of fire, creature with multiple faces, and we see that now when you look at these spheres, these wheels with all these eyes on them. This is essentially what it would believe to be. You can even get into Ezekiel's wheel, like, they were this crazy looking thing. There's pictures of them everywhere. Or you see pictures that have all these large feathers and, arms sort of coming out. And again, there are big eyes everywhere. They are not what people think.
absolutely. Yeah. And people are recording them in the skies now. I've seen so
Oh,
many recent
yeah.
videos. Crazy.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So I mean, so angels through time did start, to transform through Christianity, making them more gentle, so to speak. But the biblical accurate angels are not these soft winged guardians of the Renaissance art. They are, eldritch beings of some people would describe as terror to see
Yeah.
them. Scripture describes angels as wheels within wheels, covered in unblinking eyes, and six-winged seraphim wreathed in fire.
Yeah.
I mean, they were cosmic enforcers of divine order. Yet,
Mm.
I mean, even the Book of Enoch talked about this, about angelic encounters in ancient texts being as terrifying. Goes, they don't. The Book of Enoch says that, well, they don't reassure; they overwhelm. Human nervous systems collapse in their presence. Like they're very, very powerful beings. But in occult traditions, angels aren't there to make you feel loved. They exist to make you precise.
Mm.
They strip the illusions. They basically dismantle false identities. They destroy the past that no longer serve the structure of who you are becoming. Not that they're not doing something good, but they're not sugarcoating it. And if you get into Hermetic teachings, texts like the Corpus Hermeticum reveal another forbidden layer. Angels
Yeah.
do not speak in words,
Right.
but yet there's the whole Enochian language side of things too. Like there's a lot. It becomes very complex as to going back in time and looking at things, but they speak in synchronicities, sudden losses, unexpected delays, like things that, like, for example, change is hard. And if you're asking for change, sometimes you need that nudge. Well, that's when they come in and say, okay, that's it. This isn't a punishment. It's a forced ending. And this is the angelic language, so to speak, right? We're just going
Right.
to basically guide you through it. But the most controversial thing that I've read about them, that they're not always benevolent towards the human personality. They're loyal to the soul, to the trajectory. There's no place for egos. They don't care about your egotistical or ego
Yeah.
desires. If your prayers are aimed at preserving, anything that is not divine or good for you, they're going to oppose you. It's the way it is. They were once feared, not worshiped, right? They are not messengers of comfort. They were enforcers of the cosmic order. But yet, even today, technically speaking, I mean, we have our warrior angels, our archangels. We are very, we still call on them. They're still those warriors. They just present as something more gentle. And our guardian angels, they guide us, and there's a
I mean,
whole
we were
hierarchy
told
of them.
that. We were told that as Christians that we all have a guardian angel protecting us, and like some of them are doing a crap job of it. But
Mhm,
and that's where they lose me in Christianity. And I went to Catholic schools and raised in a very strict Christian environment.
mhm,
And I think so much of what we've been told is just. I think Wayne made a good comment. The Christian church would take over, assimilate, or destroy anything that went against their narrative. So true. What
mm,
they couldn't control, they demonize or minimalize into nothing more than fairy tales.
mm.
So well said.
I think we see a lot of that. I think, and a lot of faiths also do that. I mean, we Manly P. Hall, who used to often spoke about the spiritual hierarchies and the guardian angel. He described them as messengers, right, from heaven. And I mean, he was like, like a mason. Like he's still
Yeah.
completely he still completely, had his views on it, and people really do look at what Manly P. Hall says. You can look up some of his stuff, it's incredible, but he truly believed that we all had a personal angel, went far beyond just general guidance and protection, that they would try to raise the individual to their own higher level, a higher condition of being. But if you start getting into even the Rosicrucians and the Illuminati would describe angels and archangels or celestial creatures like they resembled small suns, being
Mm,
centers of radiant energy surrounded by, like a relic force. So,
yeah.
like, I mean, they get into all kinds of descriptions about this, and these are not orders, like they're secret orders. These aren't people that would just say no, you know what I mean? Like, we don't believe in these things. You think Illuminati, you think they don't believe in angels. Sure. They just see it differently
Yeah.
than how we see it. right? So we're getting, you start getting into things like the seraphim, like those were known as the burning ones, angels of fire. And the primary ability was to be completely consumed with the love and light of God. The dominion was the immediate presence of God. That's it. Like, you get into these to a lot of these hierarchies, and you realize just how much of a hierarchy there really is. And the seraphim, I mean, people don't really call on them. They're like powerhouses,
Were they
they're
sent
above the
to
guardians.
yeah, were they sent to do battle against evil? Like, is that their primary function?
With the seraphim, their dominion sort of thing, like was basically with the immediate presence of God, continuously involved in perpetual praise and worship. Like it's all about God. They would not have been, I mean, could they? I'm sure if he directed them,
Oh, called on them, yeah.
right? Yes. So, but I mean, they would run. I don't want to say they were errand boys or nothing like that, but if God said to them, go down and, and said with Isaiah, for instance, you go down there and you do this, the seraphim would do that, but they took direct from God. It was
Yeah.
all about God, right?
How
So
far back
that
did
was it.
how far back were you able to trace any writings or cave drawings, any of those signs of a battle between good and evil? I know it has to be way past, like,
Um,
Mayans and Egyptians and
oh gosh, I mean, you can go back into again, hybrids of the old world. I mean, there's so much information. A lot of it even goes back to ET times. But for
yeah.
example, like if we're getting into, I mean, if we want to jump right from the limit, you want, we can go back to the Watchers. But before I get into any of that, I think we should at least cover the hold on, what are the Watchers and getting into the demonic. Hold on, because I know you have a comment up there.
Yeah, well, that's regarding what you were talking about with the seraphim.
Mhm,
Sherry said they came to her in a dream in a deep meditation. I asked, why did they come to me? They said I had been singing and it was the vibration that caught their attention. A whole
mhm,
question and answer ensued, all
mhm,
very telepathic. Very wow. I
mhm.
never thought of, I mean, I read about them, but I never thought about them like
They do.
calling
I
on.
I I once, I told you, like, I had spirit paintings done and such, and the medium I was with had drawn this beautiful angel, and she goes, "You sing a lot." I said, "Yeah, and I drive, I'm terrible." I just, like, caterwaul away, but anyway, apparently I do, I must do it pretty well because I attract angels. And
Oh,
she says, yeah,
nice.
she goes, making reference to the fact that you sing a lot. And I know through healing that our singing and our own
Oh,
s-
absolutely.
vocals can heal ourselves, right? So it's kind of like, oh, that's interesting. She goes, so they're attracted to to your vibration. I'm like, huh,
Oh, yeah.
interesting. Yeah. So, and it makes sense, because I've had many encounters like that. Um, so before getting into, going back battles, I mean, we can there I don't know as far as battles between the two, because there's again a really big belief in the fact that a lot of this is also mindset, that things
Mm,
are dimensional. Heaven and hell isn't up or down, it's dimensional. And you could get
absolutely.
into a whole other show and talk about what hell is, what is it really? I think a lot has been embedded in us in conditioning to believe that this is the way things are. And you can get into some older, because the church does have a whole other part of it that that hasn't been corrupted. You have those who are very, esoteric in their education and their teachings, and they know a lot of knowledge from the old world teachings.
Mm.
It's like that stuff really does still exist, right? But let's just say, I will get back into layman terms. What exactly is a demon? And I have to say, because I've been asked this so many times, because my area of
Oh, I bet.
research and assisting people has always been with malevolent hauntings or attachments, and not that everything is, because believe me, it really is not as now I've worked many people who did not have what they thought going on. But so let's just say there were some religions that will tell you that they are pure spirits that were once angels and became fallen ones. They fell, unclean spirits. Okay. New Agers will say, no, they're ET, right? So you can get into a whole lot of things.
Oh
And
yeah.
with that being said, again, we are a hot commodity. So if they come in, they go through different stages, which always starts with an invitation. So they come
Mm,
in and, and again, there's a whole pile of stuff we can look at afterwards as far as what are the things that we could look for. What do they mean? What are they doing? And where are they similar to ET abductees? There
yeah.
is they are so parallel between the demonic, I have to say that, like, loosely, with the demonic infestation and extraterrestrial encounters, which tends to be, things coming in at night and people waking up, seeing them in the bed, whether they're abducted or whether just having an experience. It's almost parallel down to the smells, the sounds, that what they see, everything. So you have to ask yourself as far as that goes. But going back to, the beginning of time and looking into how the ancients looked at things, you know, even back then, they still looked at mental health as well. The ancients would look at things like that. You're getting into cultures that believe that unusual behavior,
Yeah.
may be symptomatic with mental health issues. This is in ancient times. And it could actually have been, perhaps in cases, caused by spirit possession. In civilizations like Egypt, China, Babylon, Greece, there was a belief that those exhibiting symptoms of psychopathology, as we know it, were actually possessed by bad spirits, and that's what's known in demonology. They believed in exorcising these bad spirits, and they would have very elaborate ritualistic ceremonies that would often involve direct physical attacks on the sufferer's body in an attempt to force out the demons.
Mm,
So you're going way back now. Whereas now we look at things like, okay, psychokinesis, psychosis, we can look at things today. Like, what about the technology that creates high levels of EMF or frequencies that can physically affect us and cause hallucination? I mean, even carbon monoxide can make us hallucinate and think like we're seeing all
oh
kinds of
yeah.
things. But then you had other
Absolutely.
cultures who were, doing ayahuasca. They still do it today, trying to
Yeah.
induce,
Yeah.
right?
But like, I wonder at what point in civilization did humans decide that there was good and evil? Like, there had to be some culture somewhere.
Mhm.
Like, I even wonder if Neanderthal man looked up at the sun and, in whatever language they thought in,
Mm.
was influenced by that concept of maybe the moon was evil and the sun was good. Who knows what? Like, I always
Mhm.
wonder where it originated, like where the roots are of the concept.
All cultures, for the most part, going back, had their belief systems in good or bad. I mean, you're going back even to the time of the solstices. There's strong belief in
Yeah,
in
absolutely.
spirits coming over. I mean, when I've done shows on the solstice, goes back like 4 or 5,000 years. That's a really long time. But in ancient beliefs, demons are mentioned throughout history, throughout myths, legends, folklore. They represent the dark evil forces. They just have different names, right? They're shapeshifters, mimics. They would torment humanity for thousands of years. But the term wasn't always referred to as evil. It meant something very different. The word demon comes from the ancient Greeks, meaning spirit. They were
Mm,
not evil per se, but they were gifted with divine powers. There are people even today who have a different understanding of how things work,
yeah.
where they essentially work with demons. they can work with them. You have to do it cautiously. So, fallen angels who were basically fallen because they came and taught the daughter of man how to adorn themselves, or how to take care of themselves, doing gardening, and what, not gardening, but
Yeah.
like growing your own food, things like that.
Sure.
And mating, with the daughters of man, it might have been a little bit taboo, shouldn't have done that. But with that being said, if these were the crimes, um, boy, it's a really major thing, at the end of the day. But again, it meant something different way back then. Okay, even the Romans believed them to be guardian spirits of individual people or places. This changed around the second century, where AD, where they became specifically referenced to evil. Their sole purpose was to corrupt or torment humanity. So let's go look at Russia, for example. One of the earliest depictions of human belief in demons was reportedly found in Russia in
Mm.
1894. They called it, I'm going to just probably butcher this, the Shigor idol, believed to be carved from one single giant log. It was engraved wooden figure, 17-foot long carving. It was carbon dated to 11,600 years ago, and science believed that it was a depiction of evil demons.
Wow.
So that's probably the oldest. It's the oldest that I have come across, with respects to evil demons.
Yeah.
Um, Getting into Egypt, Belgian Egyptologists found depictions of demons dating back 4,000 years ago, and the inscriptions show that demonic entities were definitely part of the imaginations of the ancient Egyptians, and that some temples
Oh, yeah.
actually showed signs of demonic entity that were noted as guardians of select temples and chambers. So you can go on and on. The Aztecs had the same beliefs.
Yeah.
I mean, they were said there were demons of fertility. They had male figures. They called them the Zitsimidi, a monstrous deity associated with the stars, depicted as female figures wearing skirts, often with a skull and crossbone design sort of thing, but often described as a devil or demon. So there's all kinds of different things that you can go on and on and on. But, then you get into the different names for demons. So how much do we miss, because we have the names wrong as per cultures or so on,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, and
So
some people believe that the darkness like these dark forces are misunderstood, and that they're actually here to benefit humanity,
mhm.
which is like a crazy concept because it goes in opposition to everything we feel and think. But there are cultures that thought that too.
Well, there's still cultures that think that,
Yeah.
because you
Yeah.
have to have balance. It comes down to, doing shadow work or light work. You know, look at magicians who work in chaos and things like that. Like, these are often done with other beings. But you could go through, the list of demonic names, and I named two at the beginning of the show, which are seen now as, oh, these are demons. And Christianity, around the time of Christianity, allegedly, is when a lot of this stuff shifted. But a lot of the pagan gods, for example, were demonized and categorized as such. And yeah, Lucifer, that was, yeah, like the morning star,
Exactly.
bringer of light. In fact, people talk about Satan. If I'm not mistaken, I don't think the word Satan's been mentioned one time biblically.
No, I don't think it
So
has either.
yeah. So you know what I mean? You're getting into all kinds of things, but there are people who still practice the old ways. In fact, when you look at symbolism, even at the Vatican right
Yeah.
now, okay, there's symbolism there that you're looking at going, this is satanic. But if you deep dive it, you'll see that certain things are just ancient deities. So for the rest of us, no, but for certain people, um, It's not. It's almost as though, no, we're gonna keep worshiping in the old ways.
Yeah. And that leads to my next question. Do you think that angels and demons were used, and I guess it's a rhetorical question because I believe they were ever used as political tools, especially in ancient societies, like to try to influence obedience and morality. And you talk about egregores, maybe that's where
Mm.
they come from, that we originated them.
I truly believe that, those in power know the truth about everything. I believe, I've said this, many times, that there are really old libraries out there in old families who have access to knowledge in books that we will never see. You look at the Vatican archives, and a lot of it's due to translation. Well, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that would need to be translated, but a lot of it has. And there's information, the Library of Alexandria, that got burned to the ground, but
Yeah.
I'm guessing a lot of what was in there ended up going,
Oh, yeah.
to the Vatican because it was apparently burned down by, the Christians.
Yeah. So
And
conveniently, right?
yeah, the library, one of the ancient libraries that's in Romania, the ancient library in Tibet, there are scrolls upon scrolls upon scrolls of knowledge out there, and I think a lot of it is the conditioning that we have received. We grow up, right? You learn what your parents learned, and you go to school, you learn what your parents learned or
Yeah.
what your ancestors learned. This is stuff that gets moved down, but sometimes, the information, it's very it's very structured.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
Mm.
And Wayne brings out a point with primitive mankind. I think they could see darkness as like moon and evil because often predators would come out at night. That's such a great point. They could have, began to believe that the dark was behind it. See, that's what
Mm.
it makes me wonder. So much of this is created. Like tulpas, and it's just a lot of it just seemed, and not to say it doesn't exist because it does, absolutely. But I'm
Mhm.
just wondering how much of it dating back historically didn't we not create? Because they say
Mindset is
we're so
everything.
powerful, right? What?
Yeah, mindset is everything. I mean, if you're
Yeah,
taught if you're taught to fear the darkness, you're gonna fear the darkness, I mean, I'll give an example, like, in the West here, children, they have their own rooms. There's many from the time they're babies, and you have your own room, and, suck it up, and if you have a natural fear of the dark, especially, when the child is in the womb. If you have a fear of the dark, then that transcends onto the fetus, the
yeah,
baby. But there are parts of the world, like in Europe, for example, and I know this because my daughter had gone to a German, uh, a Waldorf school, which was all based on, German belief, um, that the mind of a child works at a certain pace at a certain time, and they remain with the same teachers for 8 years. It's incredible
wow,
how they do things there. But
yeah,
point I'm making is that they encourage the family room.
mm,
So kids all have their own bedrooms, but at night, there would be different beds in a larger room, and there was no fear because you were there together, they were very
we're with the
close, and
tribe.
there
Yeah,
is that level of security, So that's just one example that I'll use. A lot of it again comes down to conditioning and what you're taught,
yeah, so
because
true.
these things are out there, and, you can make, whatever out of it. I mean, I have encountered I've had incredible angelic experiences. I've had interesting demonic or other entity experiences. I've had ET experiences,
Yeah,
um, and I don't have a genuine fear. I can be startled like anybody else. I'll be on high alert. But I was also, taught from a young age is that you don't give up your power. You can feel it, but you just don't give it up. don't run around like, screaming or, and I'm not confrontational in that way either. So there are ways of handling it, but it comes back to your own mindset,
Oh,
giving
yeah.
yourself the power, not giving your power away.
And that's such a great point because I think most of us were taught to give our power away. We were taught that we were sinners and are sinners. And, it dates back to that, that we can't trust our own intuition, our own feelings.
Mhm.
So it's deeply embedded. I think even Wayne mentioned that. He said the human brain even in early times will try to make sense of things within their world. And he used a spider example. If a
Mm.
mother's afraid of spiders, there's a good chance the child. It really
It imprints.
points, yes, and imprints.
Mhm. But
Absolutely.
that's ancestral as well. And
Yeah,
also past lives. Having a genuine fear of water may come from the fact that you may have drowned in a past life. Maybe your mother
absolutely.
had a close
Yeah.
call. Maybe like there are a lot of different things when you start getting into like, ancestral imprinting as to things that you may be feeling, certain fears you may have. Like, I mean, some people, like, I always attribute, like, my people say, "You have a warrior spirit." I said, "Yes, but, I come from, lineages through time where there were knights and there were Knights Templar, and both my grandfathers were in a war. So there's that to a degree as well. It's like I think you have that fighting spirit, and self-preservation could come from anything. Times were really hard back then. And I think, even now as we go through things,
Mm,
there's remnants of that stay with us. But I mean,
absolutely.
spiritual warfare, I mean, we can get into a whole uncensored part of that on a whole different show. But there's things even to this day. We've never not had, I don't think, spiritual warfare once once cultures or ancient civilizations came into a point where they had to have some kind of control and decided that they want to control everything and everyone.
Yeah, that's such a good
A
point. I
and
mean,
and
even
this
if you look at cult like African tribes that are, deep in the woods, and they're not civilized, basically. They're just a group of people that have been alone and never saw other people or societies, right? And
Mhm.
yet, after studying some of them, they too had good and evil and things to ward off evil and bring good. So, where does that innate ability come from?
Well, I mean, I know that, I knew someone who had spent 5 years in the Amazon,
Yeah.
with different tribal people, and they showed him how to shrink a head, and basically as to why. And he asked me once, because I filmed a segment with him, and he said, "Why do you think they shrunk heads?" And I said, "To trap the soul of the person
Yeah.
that they were whose head they were shrinking,
Like,
to
where did
keep
they
that
get
soul
so
from
where
moving
did they
on."
right, so where does that come from? Is it innate, is what I'm asking you? Do you think that it's just an innate
Mm.
ability that we all have, this drive to know that there's good and evil?
I think somewhere along the lines, I mean, um, good and evil, if you had, because where Shrunken Heads, for example, when they started, it was through neighboring tribes that you were either trying to conquer or who were doing wrong against you.
Mhm,
This was
mhm.
punishment. So was it evil or was it punishment? It's like, no, I'm going to make sure you don't get to go move on to afterlife. I mean, people believe in afterlife. They go up with shaman and medicine men, and they have their own conditions, from their ancestors or their parents, and so this is maybe their way of dealing with the legality of, no, this is a consequence for every action. There's a reaction. You tried to take over our tribe, you tried to cause harm, and now we're going to make sure that your spirit doesn't even get to go on. So there's that
Yes.
fact of afterlife. But when I saw one shrunken head specifically
Mm.
that sort of maybe go, oh, and
Oh, gee.
it was a Caucasian man. This was done like probably late 1800s, early
Yeah.
1900s, and red hair, a little orange mustache. And he said, when it was given to me, I was told, because he was given, some shrunken heads from the tribe, including this Caucasian one. And he said he came to try to preach to them, right?
Mm.
So coming in and preaching, and who knows, maybe they were armed, and that was it. So they saw him as a threat. But I mean, you going back into ancient cultures of good and evil. It's, I guess, again, how they determine evil is someone doing harm to you. They're going
Charm,
to
yeah.
see it that way, right? But let's get back to some of these cultures and let's get into extraterrestrials. We're looking at beings that may have already been here. We're looking at those multi, from the multiverse, multidimensional, interdimensional, coming from different places with teaching. Some of them weren't so great, I remember a story coming back from, the reptilians, going way back in a culture in Africa where where the chiefs, or they would pass down through oral tradition, and they came in right off the bat promising all kinds of things, and they turned into dictators, like rulers. So things like that, I mean, could have been happening all over the world. We know they've been here forever, and then we
Yeah.
know there've been some who've had incredible experiences with them because they wrote or they drew about, when you're looking at the cave art, rock art, and looking at petroglyphs and things like that,
Yeah.
they emulated what they saw, and they would build to honor what they either feared or respected. So I think we need to consider that as well. What was going on, to that specific society or culture when some of these things were happening.
Yeah, because I think the Mesopotamians had like this whole protective spirit thing, this embedded in their culture and their religion. So they focused more on protecting your spirit and things to do to protect from
Mhm.
evil. It's just so interesting
It
to
is
see.
interesting. You have to
Yeah.
just try to remember where all the stories come from, because
Mm.
there were a lot of the real stories based on oral traditions, or perhaps, again, drawings or writings from ancient civilizations, and, 'cause they would depict a lot through imagery, on pottery and stuff like that, or they would just write it in their own, like the Sumerian King's List. That's a whole other, but eventually they figured it out, Sumerian
Yeah.
texts. Um, but then you have to ask yourself, um, I'll give you one example. Okay. You have to ask yourself, did somebody translate this, or was somebody trying to, as I call it, bastardize it? And one
Mm.
is Lilith. So when you're looking at, for example, I'm just trying to find her here because I wanted to include this. Mesopotamian, known as the mother of demons, started off as the first wife of Adam, known to
Um,
be his equal, refused to submit. She left Adam and the Garden of Eden, had a union with the fallen angel Samael, and the demons that came from this union were sent to plague humanity. She's a huge threat to children and women in childbirth. Now, if you start digging, you will find that Lilith has a whole other role that goes back even to goddesses of ancient times,
yeah.
such as Isis, right? And so, like, she's I mean, even Sophia. There's a and don't shoot the messenger. I'm just letting you guys know some of the stuff that I have come across in my research. But it just doesn't have a place here. So I'm not getting too much into it. But there are a lot of old cultures going back to even the time of ancient Lemuria and Atlantis that revered the goddess energy, the goddess, not
Oh,
so much
yeah.
the god, and kind of lumped them together, like Ishtar.
Right.
They were all believed just to be, everything had its place,
Yeah.
you
It's so
know?
interesting because it's so ingrained in popular culture today that we don't even see it anymore. Like I remember Tori Amos, who's a very famous singer, musician. she had a tour or partook in a tour called the Lilith tour. And I never equated that to the goddess Lilith.
Mm.
But she didn't stand for such empowering womanized features, right? You said she was against childbirth, and
No, no, no.
what was she
This
against?
is what this is probably what the church came out with, right?
Oh, that she was.
The mother of
I
demons.
see.
Was she? Did she have a relation, with Samael, or did she get sort of put, slapped down a bit
I
because she
see.
refused to submit? We already know, as for the Adam and Eve story, civilization's been around a lot longer than Adam and Eve.
Oh, yeah,
Much longer,
absolutely.
much there's too much evidence of that. Not that they weren't there, not that they didn't have their garden, not that they didn't have a whole obviously, they had a whole line that
It's all
came after.
rewritten. All
Exactly.
rewritten.
History real history has been kept from us. It has been rewritten, it has been changed, it has been also misinterpreted. We have to
Yes, big
understand a
time.
lot of these were in ancient languages that somebody had to be able they didn't come out in English. Like people had to do translation of this. So lost in translation, of course, I'm sure that's the culprit with many of these ancient texts. But all I'm saying is there's two sides to every coin. And there's a lot of
Gosh, yeah.
people out there right now who are sharing up the knowledge. Maybe there's a reason why they don't want people to have so much access online.
That's a good point too.
Mhm.
But then why give it to us? Like,
Well,
why allow it in the first place?
I think it just depends on agendas. But with that being said too, it's like there are people out there who get out of control of false information. We're living in an age of AI. You're going to see all kinds of false stuff. I see groups right now, for example, whether it be in the paranormal, which is a little bit tougher, cryptids, especially in the Bigfoot community,
Yeah. Yeah.
or the cryptids, people getting photographs and experiences. But AI, there's so many AI photos surfacing that look so close that people are just like,
Yeah.
like we are going to start, it's a deliberate thing. They're saying, well, religions are going to be taken over by AI because it knows more. Well, somebody's got to teach it. Didn't just get created with all this knowledge. I mean, so we have to remember the sign of the times, right? We can look at the sign of the times now, like I said, a whole other show, but the sign of the times back then, even in the book of Revelations, people like there are some theologians that will say, Mark, book of Revelations, wrote this based on perhaps what he was going through. I think Nero went nuts and was burning down Rome at that time. So I mean, you're thinking, oh my God, Christians are being persecuted everywhere. Would it seem like end times? Darn straight.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's what they call history, his story, right? I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
history is, whoever survives writes it. And I guess,
Yeah. That's it. That's exactly right. So, that's just one example. I mean, for the longest time, they figured, oh no, Mary Magdalene was a prostitute. And all of a sudden, the church just in the last,
yeah,
like 10 years? No, she wasn't. And everything else, all the other researchers shows that no, she wasn't. She came from a pretty well-to-do family, actually. And it's believed that she may have funded
yeah,
many of the excursions and stuff that Jesus and the apostles and everybody went on. Like
yeah, yeah,
she funded that. Like, you see what I mean? Like things
absolutely.
change, but information gets recycled.
Yeah, that's why they call these religions like a limited hangout because they only give you a partial truth, just a piece of it,
It's
and then the rest,
on a need to know basis.
absolutely.
And we
The rest
apparently
is
don't
for
need to
control.
know. Or you're
Yeah,
meant to know, but, in spurts. There's a reason why things keep getting changed and reset and, um, books get burned and things get hidden, structures change, stories about structures change. The story of good versus evil, angels versus demons will be one that will go on until literally the end of time. I think you really need to have an open mind with that, and you have to, in dealing with the ancient civilizations, like what was going on at that time with that, because most ancient civilizations had access to things like we think we're really advanced. We're really not. We're really not. We're lucky if we can build a building that will last, maybe a couple hundred years. This side of the world, you're lucky if it lasts that. You might get one that might be a bit older. I've traveled different parts of the world. I look at buildings that, I
Oh,
mean, I slept in one
crazy.
from like the 1100s. You know what I mean? It's like that's like almost 1,000 years old, and then you have to just think, okay, technology is incredible. I've been to the pyramids. There, you cannot look at that structure and you have to look at that and go, okay, I have questions,
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
right,
Well,
but
these temples that they built were rituals right in and of themselves to honor the
Mhm.
gods and to ward off malevolent spirits, right? I mean, think about what was built. I don't even think, like you said, we could replicate a lot of these buildings today.
I don't think
It's
we could. It's as they say, a tale as old as time, and you had a lot centered around trying to either protect yourself or trying to revere, sacrifice, like I'm going to revere you. We're going to build this structure to honor you. If you look at the pharaohs did it all the time. Ancient kings, built monuments to themselves, not just in Egypt. Pyramids are all over the world, and there's a really big belief that it was, maybe Atlanteans. Maybe they were more than just one
yeah,
place. There
yeah.
is that type of belief, but there's just, it's not as specified, like it's not as limiting as we were taught to believe. There's just so much more, and cultures before us were just so much more advanced, and in many people, many cultures, they were okay with ET. Not that some of them had all the greatest experiences, but I mean, people, like I said, they just seem how we don't know where that knowledge comes from. Like, they
No.
were taught. They were taught from someone. Was it a bad experience with an
And
ET?
that's where your
Good
ET is
one?
is coming in because you're thinking that they came and influenced us with this. I mean, there's so much evidence of that. I mean, I watch Ancient Alien. Some people say it's nonsense, but there's so much truth in it, like
Mhm. But
dating back.
I think there's a lot of information that we simply are never going to be made aware of. But I know a lot of it is through oral traditions, like our North American indigenous people, they would rid themselves of evil spirits by smudging. This has been going on for like, like centuries. This isn't something that's just new. They would use prayer and various traditional rituals or visualization chants, they would call to their ancestors. But according to tradition, smoke attaches to negative energy and evil
Yeah,
spirits and then draws them away from the body.
right.
The sweat lodges, the heat causes one to sweat, which helps bring the body into balance, which in turn rids it of evil, right? They were also used for healing. Like, this is stuff again that, this is something that's taught. So I imagine all these ancient cultures had something through their own oral traditions that were
Yeah.
based on this, right? So,
I don't know. It's so perplexing. Like it, there's so much evidence. Like I said with Ancient Aliens, if
mm,
you buy into that, which there's a lot of petroglyphs glyphs and so much etchings and statues created that look like men inside of
mm.
spaceships. It kind of makes you wonder maybe, but what's the point of that? Like, why would ET do that? Is it to control us and just keep us subdued, maybe? But not that that worked so great because look at the state we're in now. But like, what would
um,
the point be of it?
well, I mean, I think it's like anything. You know, you have your good, you have your bad. There are many benevolent, races of ET out there who just
Yeah,
want to see us achieve our very best. They teach you, about consciousness. They teach you about love and treating one another really well. Like I mean, I remember reading an account where one ET had basically, said to the person during the encounter, goes, "You don't treat your elderly very well here."
that's
Like,
true. That's
like
so true.
yeah, they teach about balance and about reaching in and finding yourself to help you with your abilities. We all came here with abilities initially, and somewhere along the line, we've been dumbed up and we forget, and we don't have all of those memories, and ET does try to help you get that back, but then you have the
Yeah, that makes
malevolent
sense.
ones, and they're
Yeah.
the ones who it is. It's like any other race. It is control, especially if it's for energy. You'll hear all kinds of stories, what reptilians like to eat, like, people. Yeah,
The
maybe some of them
loosh.
do. Well,
Yeah,
the
they want
loosh,
the loosh.
that too, the energy, but it's just it's also along the lines that there are some good reptilians out there too, though,
Why do you
right?
think it is that if you look at modern day culture, people like Bob Dylan and many of the artists that are
Mhm.
out there touting their allegiance to Satan and satanic forces and demons and whatnot. I mean, he admitted in a video that he sold his soul to the big guy, as he called him, for fame and fortune. I wonder why it is that no one does that. No, I've never seen anybody flip that and say, "Well, I prayed to God for success and fortune, and I got it." I mean, I don't see that as much as I do the demonic aspect. Does evil give us what we want to win us over?
Mm.
Maybe is it
Oh,
like a
boy.
tactic? Yeah.
I'll tell you, I've worked with hundreds hundreds and hundreds of people over a couple of decades on this sort of exact thing. And one of the things I hear a lot was, "Well, I'm psychic now.
Oh,
It gave me a psychic ability. Um, well, it promised me this, it promised me that." And meanwhile, nothing really came to fruition. And my whole answer to the psychic thing is if you are living with an energy that powerful, you are going to start picking up on stuff, and they might give you a little bit of insight into the world of psychic ability, but
yeah.
it's going to be short-lived for the most part, because get rid of the attachment, and then all of a sudden, when people
It goes.
try to jump back in and take control of their lives and their space, because you can do it. We are powerful. When I say, like, we're really something, we really are.
Yeah.
And we take our power back and take control, all of a sudden they're just like, "Oh, yeah, I can't seem to do that anymore." Like, there are people who have worked with demons and, that I remember having a conversation with somebody who just said, "Oh, yeah, I work with demons and this and that. I work in the occult and this and that." I'm like, "Oh,
Yeah.
that's whatever floats your boat." And,
Yeah.
and it was like, "Yeah, I'm just trying to work on, getting winning a lottery or getting a good amount of money." I'm going, "Hasn't happened yet. How long you been working with them?" It's
Right,
like
right, right. That's a
it
good point.
it doesn't always happen that way, but
Yeah.
maybe you don't know all the secrets, because there are a lot of very elite people out there from
Oh,
very
yeah.
old families who seem to still be doing all right.
Yeah, exactly. They gotta know something we don't. Hillbilly Herbs made a good point. He said, "Yeah, Dylan and his Crossroads deal, very interesting." Now, I've heard this before, and I wonder what your opinion is on that. Some say you can't actually sell your soul because it's not yours to barter with.
I believe that. I believe that we
Yeah,
can. The thing is that if you don't believe it, that's where the
right.
edge is, because you there are I'll back up. If you just say, "I'm gonna do this," they take it very seriously. and they will torment you, and they will be there waiting for you, at the end of your life. Because, I mean, seeing this happen, with people who've been stuck for so many times. But if you get your control, and you turn around and you say, "Oh," if you said it, take it back. You're allowed to change your mind. You just do it. Now, when you're getting into the world of celebrities, for instance, or
Right.
people who decide to sell out,
Yeah.
there's a whole other process there where, you know, you're given. The theory is that you're given it. The entity is assigned to you. You belong to this one right here.
Mm,
This is how, throughout research that I have read, this is something that seems to be a theory. And in communicating even with spirits who have souls, it's been a matter of, hearing something growling in the background. You're kind of like, wow.
oh, shit.
So I think, are they conditioned to believe that they don't have that option? That's that your essence, it's who makes you who you are.
Yeah.
The soul, the body is just collateral damage if you're in a possession state, or if you're in a state where when you pass, they just jump on the essence. The body, you hear through possessions, the body just goes through so much. I've seen people lose tremendous amount of weight, get very, very sick, and really the mental health just goes down. Like, it's the
Yeah.
easiest thing for them to manipulate, but the prize is always the essence. But they have to convince you, and they do that through
Surrender it.
fear that you belong to
Yeah.
them, but you
Yeah.
don't.
I
You
believe
don't.
that too.
Yeah, you have
If you
control.
believe in good and evil, do you think that means you have to believe in heaven and hell?
I believe in balance. I believe that a lot of what we're experiencing in the world is just shifts in balance.
Mm,
Some of it, call it evil, much like the ancients. They had a lot of different terminology for it. You can swing one way or the other. One is going to be very negative, evil. There are evil people in the world, who just do horrific things, and there are people of light who do amazing things, and do it because they give of themselves because they can, and that's the balance. So that's what
mm.
I believe in. Not that there aren't scary things out there. Sure there are. We share a whole other space, through dimensions
Yeah.
of beings that we're not even familiar with, because that never rear their heads, but that influence a lot of what goes on
Yeah.
within this realm. Some of those are in human form and others not so much.
That makes so much sense. So human beings are believed to have free will, right? We're taught that. And
Mm.
we have this free will so that we can choose sides in this struggle, right? So making morality like an active spiritual choice, right? And don't you think that that's basically at the crux or what has influenced Judaism, Christianity, Islam? I mean, it just seems that way. It's always based on this concept of free will. You can choose between good and evil.
Well, take it a step further, going back to a lot of the malevolence that occurs, in this world. Sometimes there are conditions they choose, but sometimes they need your approval or acceptance. So
Right.
just by
Right.
putting it on a film that everybody's watching and liking, oh, that's acceptance. Just for following maybe certain celebrities, and going to a concert and spending $1,000,000 to go and see it. That's acceptance. You see ceremonies happening on stage as part of a choreographic dance. That's
Right.
acceptance. You're cheering, that's acceptance. You see, so
Right.
some of it is acceptance. We're accepting it, therefore we are in agreement with it.
Oh,
So,
good lord.
right, we have to really think. Things are, hidden in plain sight.
Yeah. I mean, think
When
about that. Do you think a lot of people even think about that? That they're at a concert cheering, like you said, and being in agreement with these demonic
well, because
ceremonies on stage?
because they don't know what they're looking at. They just think it's
Right.
a great choreographic piece, and they don't necessarily know what they're
Yeah.
looking at. So this is what I mean, like, sometimes the theatrics, you know, but there's all the world is a stage, and it's probably the best way to leave it, and it's been like that for, a very long time once certain people came into being, and organizations, were given a whole lot of power, not just business, but through religion. I mean, you give them you see some of these evangelists. Oh, it is crazy. I mean,
Oh
millions of
gosh.
dollars in these big, huge, elaborate, buildings, I land, hundreds of acres being given to this charity, and they go after a while. It's not, they just go belly up, become and proven corrupt or whatever. So I think people look for that positive, and it's like, well, I once had someone say to me, who left a lot of land to one of these Sunday evangelists, and he goes,
Mm,
"I feel good in knowing that I can leave this to somebody. It makes me feel good to leave it to this
right.
organization." I said, "It's your money. That's all that matters, is how it makes you feel inside. It's your
Right.
good deed."
True.
He goes, "What happens to it on the other end?" He goes, "I would like to think and believe it's going to be good, that it's not just gonna be taken and making somebody else a fat cat, so to speak."
Yeah.
But there's, it's mindset again, but people are looking for something, for that feel good, that place where they feel like they want to belong, and with that, there's always a balance. There's always a balance. So when you're making that choice, always look at the other side of the coin. And people say, well, why do you always want to go looking for things like that? Because you need to know. I just don't want, for me, okay, and I can only speak for myself. For me, I have never chosen to go through life blind. I
Mm,
always want to know if I'm in agreement with this, I need to know the other side too.
absolutely. Yeah.
For every action, there's a reaction, right? For every decision, there's a consequence,
Yep.
or there can be. So if you know what those consequences are, you kind of maybe know how to maneuver around them. Like, there's a lot more to it. It's not so black and white.
And it's interesting because if you take people that have definitely witnessed demonic forces and
Mhm,
seen them visually,
mhm,
experienced them like yourself, you've worked with them. And then you take a group of people that have not, and it's the furthest thing from their reality.
mhm,
It's so hard for somebody like you to convince, not that you would, I'm just using it as an example, to convince group A, hey, there are these demonic entities out there. I've seen them, I've worked with them, I witnessed them, because they have not witnessed them firsthand. So they live in an absolutely opposite reality in terms of good and evil to what you have.
Well, you have to understand too, like, I work with people who are under oppression or attack.
Right.
There's something that's leading them to believe that they're under attack by something. Sometimes it's nothing more than psychosis, psychokinesis. Sometimes it's very, very logical. Other times, no, they really are victimized. Then I have to explore, was there an invitation made? So sometimes that's done through children, because children are innocent and we have an entity mimicking a small child. And then once the invitation is made, things amp up and things get ugly, and the child starts to get fear, and then it starts to work through the
Sure.
family, divide and conquer, right? So,
Right.
but with respects to people who may be unsuspecting, well, we've talked about this on grieving. Grieving is a very
Oh
natural thing
gosh.
to do, but it can also put a bullseye on our back. Addiction,
Oh God.
sadness, you know, I mean, mental health is a real big one.
So even though, Michelle, that you're not agreeing, say you're in a state of grief for addiction or those examples you just gave. So you're not in a state of agreement, but yet these things can get hold of you. How do they do that without you agreeing to that? Or are you unconsciously agreeing?
Well, okay, let's use a grieving, for instance. When you lose a loved one, people so desperately, you miss them so much, and you look for signs.
Absolutely. Oh, so you're in agreement right there.
You're looking for
Yeah.
signs. You just don't know where the
Yeah.
sign is really coming from, you know? So sometimes you have to be very, very specific. You know, I only want a sign from my loved one. I don't
Yeah.
anybody
Yeah.
think about getting fancy coming in. Like,
That's such a
you
great
know,
point.
you have to be very specific because sometimes in your grief you don't think about, and why would you? Why would you think
Right.
that all of a sudden something's going to come and try to infiltrate your space and your family's space because you are mourning someone that you loved? You don't think about things like that. So, and sometimes when it happens, it's so subtle, but then the acceptance is, oh my God, you know, was that you? Or right. And it's a form of taking it in. So that's, and again, that's just one example, but it's a
Yeah, that's
powerful
really
one.
poignant. It really is.
Go, you know, how many times you maybe people go to the cemetery, or people just have, show me a sign, just let me know you're here. I need to know you're here. I need to know you're okay. It's all natural, and we
It
shouldn't have
is.
to fear things like that. And you don't always have to fear things like that, but you just have to realize that it's a good possibility because you are in a weakened state. You're
Yes.
mourning. You're off. Your guard's off. You just want to heal.
Yeah, it's so darn true. You know, and it's funny because if you look at like pre-Socratic philosophy and you look at Plato's beliefs, he didn't frame good and evil as monsters fighting, in the ether. He placed that battle inside human perception. And he developed the allegory of the cave, right? Which I
Mhm.
don't know if a lot of folks know about, but so Aristotle did too, and a lot of the great philosophers look at good and evil as internal battle. It's a psychological, even Jung, it's psychological. So it's not coming from the ether, it's coming from internal.
100%.
Yeah.
I'm a huge believer in that. You know, like, and working with people, I've always said, take your power back. This is,
Yeah.
you are the one in control because you can manifest
Yes.
what you want. Do you ever stop to think that there's a reason why we are often kept in fear with a barrage
Oh,
of
daily,
newscasts, a barrage
daily.
of imagery, certain musics? Like, there are things that are there to keep us in a perpetual state of fear. We live
Intentional.
our own
Absolutely.
internal hell. It's just some people will say this is purgatory. This is hell. You know, like, there's so many, there's so many different theories with it. But in the end, you will often hear people who are a little more evolved in their spirituality say things like, you are in control, be one with consciousness. We're one. You have control. You have control. And those who just step out of the fear box, that just seem to just not bothered by anything. They end up having really great lives. Well, all this other stuff is going on. You know, you're thinking, "Oh God," you know what I mean? There's a war coming in, or there's all kinds of different things you can think about, or like, you're living paycheck to paycheck, whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
Whereas people just sit there and say, "No, the universe will provide." And when you ask them, like, "Oh no, it does. I don't worry about things like that." I'm just like, some of us who know this, you still go on and live your life being worried or being fearful, or we are powerful beings.
Yeah.
We can and we do manifest a lot. Why is it so easy to manifest fear? Why is it so easy to manifest rage or anger, or worry? I manifest more worry and more angst. Why is it so hard to go to the flip side of that and manifest all of these
Yeah.
great things?
Great
It
point.
shouldn't be.
People
It's
don't think of that though. They right away jump the gun and think the worst.
mhm,
Even though 99% of the time that never comes to fruition, like the
mhm.
things we think of, the
Yeah.
worst case scenarios, they never come to fruition. But
Mhm,
yet we're bombarded with, these external, and I believe they are external thoughts not coming from you really.
mm.
They're coming from
The higher
elsewhere.
self. Well, it could be your higher
Absolutely.
self. How many times do you ask for, let's say, like, you maybe assistance with something? You
Oh,
or you're
all
you're
the
looking
time.
for an answer,
Yes.
and you don't see it, therefore, you don't acknowledge it. But then when you ponder on it, maybe even years later, you went, "Oh my god, that was my answer, and I totally didn't see it." Life keeps you busy, and it's kept like that on purpose for many people. You just go through the grind. You just go day to
Yeah.
day, week to week, month to month. There is not a lot of time because we don't give ourselves a lot of time to sit and ponder things. You don't even
So true.
necessarily have to meditate, but find yourself a quiet spot, listen to a little bit of music, and just let your thoughts go towards something positive.
Yeah.
Spirituality is within, it's a personal thing.
Absolutely. And it's such a game changer when you do that.
Mhm,
And that's why I love pre-Socratic philosophy, because people like Aristotle, they believed that this battle between good and evil existed because humans are not, number one, purely rational beings. And we're not.
no.
We love that dopamine hit,
Mhm,
from the news and all the other toxic crap that we allow.
mhm,
He also believed that desire also conflicts with wisdom, and that's so true. How
mhm,
many of us put our desires ahead of what we know is the wise decision, right?
mhm,
And that to keep a moral balance is a very fragile thing to do and very situational. And that's so true. It's
mhm,
so true. Morality, which we equate with goodness, right?
mm.
It's difficult to do, to be a moral person. Think about it. It's not easy. To
Well, it is, and we've not been I mean, I'll say we've not been, conditioned to do so. I mean, you can go, the church will say, "Yes, we've conditioned you to be a good person." Your teachers will say, "Yes, we conditioned you to be a good person."
Yeah,
But actions speak louder than words as well,
absolutely.
right? So this is how you're taught. If you're somebody immoral is trying to teach you morality, you're gonna kinda go, "Hmm." But there's too many the temptations, there's too many things out there that can take you out of that moment, when people, again, are you always rewarded for morality? You find that, you know,
Yeah,
200 bucks down there in a certain place in a wallet. Do you just say, "Hey, I
yeah,
found the wallet with no money," or do you,
right.
you know what I mean? Or you
That's
give
what I'm
back the whole
saying.
thing?
It's
Like,
it's not easy to make the moral right decision.
yes.
And that's why you'll find a lot of atheists that are very moral,
Mhm.
good people, because they separate their morality from their religious indoctrination.
Mhm.
They believe that morality is an innate thing that all humans have. And yeah, it's not easy to always do the right thing, right, Michelle? It's not always easy.
It's an age-old thing, but in the
Yeah,
end, it comes down to that right and wrong, the good and versus the evil. Do the right thing. If there's a 200 bucks in the wallet, that person who had it
yeah,
in there maybe need that. That
that's
might
right.
be their groceries for the week. That might be, something for their kids. That might be like,
That's
we don't know. You're barking at
no,
somebody on the road raging. I know I do it.
that's
And I
right.
try to think to myself, "You know what? Maybe that person's just having a really bad day. Maybe his
That's
life isn't
right.
so great. Maybe" it's hard to go through those motions. You cannot control all the situations that you are presented with, but you can
Mm,
control how you deal with it, how you perceive it, where you go with it.
so true. I love how the Egyptians used, I saw it in their carvings too. They would weigh your
With Ma.
heart.
Yeah,
Yeah, with a feather,
that's
and
right.
it had to be as light as a feather, which,
That's right.
like, is almost impossible. So they even knew this concept.
They did.
They even knew.
They
It's
did.
crazy.
Has it been about good and evil, or has it just been about right and wrong?
Right. Which is good and evil though, right?
In a
I mean, we
form.
yeah, in a
In a
form, right?
form. Yeah. One will get you possessed, the other one won't.
Oh, jeez.
No, just kidding. No, but I mean, like,
No, I think that's true.
there's different variables there, but yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's important. Don't be afraid to let, the universe or your creator to take the wheel. Take a step back and just say, "You know what? I don't need to be in control of everything." And that's really hard for somebody who's used to having complete control. Just sit back and just say, "No, I'm going to just let the universe see where this goes and relax a little bit." Like it's tapping into consciousness,
Yeah,
listening to your higher self. But the consciousness thing, when it says like we are one or I am, we are one. I am.
that
This
is
is this
huge.
is this is the thing. It is. It's huge. And we're not taught that. We're taught division, we're taught fear, we're taught consequences. And to a degree, you have to have those things. You live in a society, whether it's legally, whether it's spiritually, but in the end, it's just like let yourself be taught the flip side of all that also, which is
Right.
calm, peace, unity, kindness, love. It will outweigh everything else, and it will allow you to deal with everything else on a whole other level.
Mm, that's so true. Do you think the spiritual awakening that we're hearing about is happening globally? Do you think that, because we always hear good always wins in the end, good always, even biblically, we always hear that. Do you think that's true that people believe that good always wins in the end? And that's what's happening with this spiritual awakening that many of us are having?
I like to be a realist. I'd like to say, yes, good does always prevail. Sometimes there's a lot of casualty uh, on the way to that road. There always has to be balance. There will always have to be balance. So I think it would be nice to see the scales tipped to the light a lot more. I
Mhm.
think we would notice a huge difference, but that balance has to somehow be in there. I think it's just how we deal with it again. But I mean, it's hard to look at a parent, for example, who's lost a child and say
Yeah.
good always prevails because there's like, no, I lost my child and it was in a violent way, for example, and I didn't get justice, for example. Like there'll be many reasons to not want to feel that love and light, and then you do get those exceptional people who just say no. I'm at peace with this. I'm okay with this. Like it's a healing journey, and everybody does it differently. But I do believe that good will always overcome evil. But it's everything in between that's can be sort of frightening.
Yeah.
There will always has to be balance.
That is so damn true.
You know,
It's all
that
about balance.
balance doesn't have to be harsh. I mean, I'm down for like a nice casual balance, but it doesn't always have to be like to the extremes when we think
Yeah,
evil.
that's so
Like
funny.
it's just there's just like the balance could be something else that's just uncomfortable. It doesn't have to be evil. It could just be uncomfortable, right? The balance,
Yeah.
comfort, uncomfortable,
Yeah,
love,
that's a good
light,
point.
darkness. I mean, it's there. Darkness should not be feared. That's a conditioning. You don't fear it. There's beautiful things in the dark.
Yeah, I
The
agree with
northern
that.
lights, the boreal, the
Yeah,
stars, the
absolutely,
planets, the sounds.
absolutely.
There's nothing like sitting, next to the water at night when the sun goes down, listening to the loons and the frogs. And there are
Yeah.
things out there that do not have to be frightening. Focus on that. The balance,
Yeah,
day,
because there's
night.
always some light within the darkness, right?
Oh,
There's always some
yes.
level of light.
Yeah, that's right. Don't fear it. It's just another element.
I do love how Carl Jung brought into this whole good and evil thing about shadow work, and now it seems to
Mm.
be something we hear about like almost daily, especially folks like us that are really into this topic, right?
Mhm.
He believed, again, that the battle is internal, that it's within ourself, that this repressed darkness doesn't disappear, but it rather acts out. And
Mm.
that's his perception of evil. But
Mhm.
isn't it one and the same? I mean,
Yeah,
don't we all inherently carry good and evil?
it's balance.
Right.
That's all it is. It's just balance. You can't really have one without the other. Anything I do in light, I can do the other way. I choose to do. It's a choice. I choose to do more in light. You don't think how many people drive down the road and see somebody being utterly ridiculous on the road, and you'd like to think, "We should just go Mad Max on this person," right? Just laser beam right out there and just be done with
Right.
it.
Right.
Get off the road. Like
Yeah.
we think about things like that, but realistically, it's you choose
Really
the other
do.
side.
Do you
Yeah,
remember a few years ago when, gosh, maybe it was more than a few years ago. I'm so bad with time frames. Pay it forward was like a huge
I
thing.
use it all the
Everybody was
time.
Yeah, everybody was going to Starbucks, like, and paying for the
Yeah,
guy behind and
yeah,
doing, all paid leaving money
mm,
envelopes around, and
it's huge.
you yeah, it was huge, and I love that happened to humanity, whether or not it was for purely self-gratification reasons. But to me, it's all about actions. It's not your words. Anybody could speak words of honesty and truth, right?
Mhm,
It's your actions, how you can help your brothers and sisters on this planet.
mm.
And
Well,
that's where good and evil lies, right, Michelle?
I'll give you a perfect example of pay it forward. I've helped a lot of people throughout the decades. And people will say, I need to repay you somehow. I said, no, you don't really. It's fine. They're like, no, no, they want to feel like they want to make sure,
Yeah, yeah.
they're grateful and they want to do something. And I always say, pay it forward. I says, pay it forward. Go do
That's
something nice for
beautiful.
somebody else, or I don't know, drop a couple of bucks, in a charity thing, donate
Sure.
something, animal charity. Spend your time with somebody who needs it. Go give your time to
Exactly.
an elderly person or a child, or you know what I mean. I say, pay it forward, and I've that's just what I've said. That's what I've done.
100% agreed with that. It's really about, and I raised my kids with that premise too. I always told them, anybody could spew words. Words are easy. It's your actions that count.
Mhm.
Maybe you could tackle this one. Contessa says that I think I failed the test because I find it hard to forgive someone that has done evil to another person. That's a big one. That's
Well, look at it from this point of view. What is with that person? I'll give you another example. Doing evil. Let's just take a killer, for example.
yeah,
A serial
yeah,
killer who's done time in jail, blah, blah, blah. Many serial killers, many people, not just serial killers, just somebody who's done that. They're in jail for a reason. Um, they've shown just working through, different mediums and such, and having seen it also, myself, some of these people have attachments. So you have to ask yourself, what came first? Did the attachment cause the crime or the deed, or did the deed bring in the entity? What is it exactly? So let's say said person passes away. You're thinking, good, that person's going to go to hell, this and that. Again, mindset. Now let's dissect that for a minute. Let's just say that that person's going to hell. You know, Satan looks at him and says, "Well, you caused a lot of ruckus up there. Let's put you back. Let's just let you step into somebody else. Let's allow you to go in as a spirit and torment a few people. Maybe you can, sort of attach to somebody and get him to start doing some murders that you
yeah.
did. Or so let's look at that cycle. Or, let's say a medium comes in and says, "Yep, he's gone. I can remove him from this space." Blah blah blah. Um, or that medium can say, "No, we're going to see if maybe." we can somehow have archangels or pray or see if we can move him on and let the light deal with him. And,
Mm,
Christianity will say this person has to atone, this person has to
right.
go to purgatory, whatever the faith is. But in doing so, that soul, that specific energy will not return to cause further angst in this time and space
Wow.
until the atonement or whatever
Is
the
done.
karma
Yeah.
may be, he will have to or she will have to deal with their karma of what they've caused instead of being recycled back. You see, there's a flip side of everything, and those who work, within certain fields, these are things that we have to think about.
Yeah.
Don't have to like it. You just have to be smart about it.
So you don't really need to worry so much about forgiving someone who's done evil to you or a loved one because the universe is going to take care of that, whether it's through karmic action or
Mm.
paths of
Well,
reincarnation, right? I mean,
Caroline, I've seen people, go to the murderer of their loved one and say, "I forgive you."
yeah,
Because you can either live with the angst of, "God,
right.
I hope that person gets everything he's got coming to
Yeah,
him," or you can set yourself free and set your loved one free and just
yeah,
that person
so
who did the
true.
deed becomes inconsequential. Somebody
Yes,
like that should
brilliant.
never be a driving force of consequence in your life. It's easy to say, and I hope I never have to be in that position, because I would like to think, because you could go either way with that and just be totally like, "I'm gonna mess you up," or you could just say, you are not worth my time.
Yeah,
You're
that's
just not
fun.
worth my time.
All right,
You're not
right.
worth the karma that I will have to deal with."
Exactly. And it's not easy to do. I mean, and we recently saw a good example of that with Charlie Kirk,
Yeah.
that Erica forgave
Mhm.
him right out of the gate. And it seemed pretty sincere. I mean, in terms of just perception,
It's for
who
your own
knows?
healing.
I what?
People of faith, I
Yeah.
mean, they're very faithful for a reason, some people
Yeah.
more faithful than others,
Yeah.
but in the end, you want to beat spiritual warfare, start with yourself because you are the only one you have control over as to what you allow to take over your space or your mindset. You're the only one. You have control. It starts with us, I believe.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, even starting a sentence with "I could never," what you put yourself in a you lock yourself into that belief system
Mhm.
by uttering those words too.
The
Like,
word
I could
never,
never
yeah.
forgive.
Never say
I could
never.
right. It's the
Mhm.
same thing when people say all or nothing. Like, you have to
Mhm.
try to avoid because maybe has a lot of potential. Just maybe,
It
right?
does. And if you're with a loved one who's about ready to pass, it never hurts to hold their hand and say, "I don't know if you need this from me or not, but if you need my forgiveness for anything," and it might be something we don't even
Oh,
know
I
about,
love
it
that.
could be past karma, like past lives, because soul circles follow each other around, and
Yes.
I just say, "If you need my forgiveness for anything, you have it. I forgive you. If you need it, I forgive you."
Oh, I love that, Michelle.
Yeah. It's just, it could be
So
ancestral stuff, whatever.
freeing.
It's just like, yeah, yeah. It's important. It helps us transition.
And I would imagine you could still say that after someone passes too, right?
Yes.
Just say that
Yeah.
prayer and
Yeah. You don't even have to. They hear you. It's our thought process that thinks that they can't hear us. You don't have to even say it out loud. So if you need me to forgive you for this, I do for anything. I mean, you may not even know what it is.
yeah,
It could have been
yeah.
another life you both shared together. And the reason you came back this time, maybe you didn't accomplish what you were supposed to. Just say, "Hey, I'm going to let go of all that past stuff, whatever, where from one life to the next, whatever it takes to help you transition to a better state of being." And that might allow you the same option.
I often think that the struggle between good and evil isn't because this like a flaw in the system. I think it is the system. It's
Mhm,
just the way it is.
mhm.
I don't think of it as a mistake or a flaw. I think that it's just innate in humans. It just is. It just is,
It just is. Yes.
right? It
Yes.
just is.
It just is. I'll tell you, you know, all it takes is just doing it once or twice, and it's
Mhm.
incredible how natural it becomes. And I know Contessa says you guys are better at than me that way.
Yeah, I don't think
I
that
think
has
it's just being faced into the, being faced with the right in the right situation. You know, you could be the best person ever, you know, bad things happen to good people all the time, and again, you are only
absolutely.
in control of what you do with it. Nobody deserves to rent space in your head, ever. Ever. This is you. This is yours. It's your space. You can think about your loved ones, you know, it's a little bit of a different situation than having, you know, being faced with a situation in real time while you are still going through your life here. Always just remember, it's just not worth letting anybody spend time in your head that way.
Gosh, that's so true. We've had so many amazing comments too. Kira, is that how you say that?
Yeah,
Yeah. I told my mom a few days before she passed, we don't want you to go, but if you want to go, go ahead. One of the hardest things I ever had to say. So
it's
true.
tough.
'Cause a lot of times that people don't want to leave for their loved ones. They
I
don't want to.
know. And
Yeah.
and and that's it's
Yeah.
because we love them so much, but
All right.
you know, I had to do it with both of my parents in a very short period of time because they were very, very quick. And I just, you know, when I looked at my mother and said, "Hey, Steve," I had to look at my mother and basically say, you know, "Is this something you want to do?" She goes, "Oh, I think so." I says, "Think isn't cutting it with me. I really need to be more concrete." And you know, she goes,
Mhm.
"Yeah, I'm prepared to that." I was like, "Okay, that's okay. Then you should do that." And then we talked about what to expect over there, you know, over there, like wherever
Sure.
her
Yeah.
journey was,
Yeah. Yeah.
and my father was non-communicative, so all I could do is just reassure him with as much, you know, love and light and forgiveness for whatever he needed. Again, you know, I had great parents. I had a great childhood, and I wanted their afterlife to be and their transition to be nice and smooth because that
Yeah.
was the last thing I could do for them.
Oh,
And
that's so.
sometimes with your loved one, that is the very last thing you can do for them. Whether they deserve it or not, it will come to you in the end with that karma.
Did you ever encounter that guardian says my mother came back after passing asking for forgiveness where someone deceased just really wants to be forgiven for anything that
Um,
they might have done?
not myself personally. We had a story that went through the family with a great grandparent, and I guess the you know the great grandfather had an affair, and the woman died, and
Oh,
she just basically had little flames would show up on her door or her windowsill and things
oh,
like that, and
wow.
she would just say in French, she goes, "Okay, okay." She called her, a maudite vache, which is kind of like an effing cow, which wasn't very nice to the cow, but anyway, that is what she called her in French, and she goes, "Okay, okay, I forgive you, whatever you need now, just get out of my face," or something like that, and then all of a sudden, a hand this is 2 stories up in a wintertime, and a hand just went like this, waving goodbye, and there were no prints in the snow, so this is just an old story that went through,
Yeah.
you know, but I've had people request to see me before passing, just to say, you know, how can I get, you know, forgiveness and well, how
Oh,
they
wow.
feel like they wanted to prepare. How can I prepare for my loved ones before I pass? And
Mhm.
I always say, do up a really nice video or something and leave something special just for them. Not something that you have to buy for them, something you already have and tell them why. Just so something personal or just those are just some examples or just a video. Tell them how you feel about them. Put it in a card. Ironically, about 8 months before my mother passed, she sent my sisters and I each a card with a full
Mhm.
message going back about things from our childhood and how
Oh,
special we
wow.
all were. And yeah, I kept journals from my kids until they were old enough to
Nice.
remember me. So if something happened to me, they would always know how loved they were.
That is
It's
so
that
beautiful.
easy. Yeah.
And finally, I read a quote from someone, I don't even remember, but it kind of stuck with me because it went something like, light requires effort and darkness is the default. Do you think that's true that, oh, Librecast, bonsoir.
Bonsoir. Good night
So
to you
good to
both.
see you.
Thank you.
Do you
Um,
think that that's true, Michelle, that light requires effort and darkness is the default within man?
Darkness is easy. For some
Yeah,
reason, it's easy to do certain deeds. For some people, not for everyone. I find light to be so simple. It's easy to be a good person.
yeah,
Sometimes, though, it requires eating a bit of crow, and I don't mean that literally. I
yeah,
just mean,
right.
it means humbling
Yeah,
yourself, and it's not easy.
absolutely.
Some people can't get past the ego. Right, whereas in darkness, again, I find beauty in darkness 'cause I've worked in both, and I find comfort in both. But for some, the visualization, the darkness represents certain things, and it's just easier because you don't have to humble yourself to someone else.
Right. That's such a good point. Because the ego, get
That
back to the
ego
ego.
thing. I
The
know, it's
ego,
always ego. That was
it
the
is
last show,
always
you guys
ego.
gotta go listen. Yeah.
Well, this was such a fascinating discussion. I would love to do a part 2. I've still got 2 pages of questions left.
Absolutely. I told you. There's a
Yeah,
lot we
you were
didn't
right.
cover. Yeah, like ancient exorcisms and all kinds of stuff. We have a lot of fun stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
We gotta do a part 2 of this for sure. I love this topic so much. It's everything. Thank you, Michelle. I love you
Pleasure.
dearly.
Love you too.
I oh,
Bye, everybody.
what a this'll remind you of something. I love you from my soul.
It
Right?
does. It does. It does. Because they say the heart eventually stops beating, but the essence goes on forever.
Right.
Yes,
Beautiful.
exactly.
Thank you so much, Michelle.
You're welcome. Bye, everybody. Mwah.
Thank you all. I loved all of your comments. They were amazing. Sorry if I didn't get to them all, but I want to thank Michelle for sharing her insights and her expertise and her vision and helping us to understand that it's not just the battles outside of us, but also the battles within. Gosh, it's so true. And we're going to do a part 2 of this. Absolutely. It's an amazing topic and I love it. Thank you all for tuning in. You've been listening to Ethereal Encounters Unveiled live on the United Public Radio Network and the UFO Paranormal Radio Network, 105.3 on the Gulf Coast and 107.7 FM in beautiful New Orleans. Thank you all so much. And I will see you guys tomorrow. Don't forget to tune in. Tomorrow's Thursday. Yes. We're having this storm coming on Sunday, and everybody's like freaked out about it. But oh, and thank you, Heidi. Love you dearly. Love everyone in the comments. Thank you all. See you all tomorrow. Bye bye.